Hey, good evening, folks. Welcome to the pre-show, which is the time of the show where we just get set up and make sure we're all doing okay here. Why is my mic all... My mic is flaccid tonight. There we go, the mic arm. How's everybody doing? Good, I trust. Let's get this open for the stream to the radio station. That's set to go. And bada boom, bing, bang, boom. How's everybody doing? Welcome to the program. Welcome to the pre-show of the program. And there it is. I got to share something with everybody tonight. Copy that. And put that away. Boom. All right. I'm going to paste that in here. This is the Patriot Propaganda Apparel website. You'll have to go visit that. That's a new venture. Hey, Josh Kemp. How you doing? All of you who are new here, this is the pre-show. We go live on the radio at 9:03. And so we just chit-chat and babble for about 3 minutes at the beginning to make sure everything's all set and ready to fly. So I hope you are all enjoying yourselves this evening. Carlene Smith, welcome. Uncle Dave Potter, welcome to the show as usual. Elvis is in the building. And I wish I could do a good Elvis impersonation, but I can't. I'd have to work on that for a while. So what do we got? We got less than a minute, and we go live. So we'll just hang out for less than a minute before we get going. Grumpy Stack, yo! Good to see you. Yeah, we still got snow on the ground, but it's, remember we had the 12 inches 3 days ago, 2 days ago? And now we didn't even have the driveway plowed. The driveway's totally clear because the sun has been melting it off. It's been close to 50. It was in the mid 40s today. It's going to be close to 60 this weekend. We'll watch some good melting snow and some good water accumulating in the basement before we can get the window wells fixed. All right, we got to go dark. We'll be back in a couple of seconds with the live show. Stand by.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Happy Monday evening, folks. Welcome to the program. I'm Scotty Roberts. I'm your host on this here, my show, the Intrepid radio program, broadcasting live in audio format only over on Subspace Odyssey Radio. You can still go over to Odyssey. Well, I got to see even what the website is. I don't know if it's changed, but Russ, the owner of Odyssey Radio, sold that off to Rocky and to Ron Phillips, and they just sold it back to Russ. And so you can go to odysseyradio.com. And Odyssey, by the way, is spelled differently than you might think, because I think the real spelling of Odyssey was already taken, but when they originally did this. But here is the link. There it is. Paste it into the Facebook chat or the YouTube chat, odysseyradio.com. That's ODYSY radio.com. So you can go on over there and hear the show in its audio format. And if you're already over there and you'd like to join us in the video simulcast of this show, come on over to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And when you're there, you can hit the subscribe button. You can also hit the join button and find out ways you can support this broadcast. And let's see, what was I going to say? Oh, also, the show ends on the radio in 1 hour. And after that hour, we stay live, continuing going live over in the YouTube channel. And you can catch the second hour, which we The fans of this show have affectionately named a year ago the Captain's Cabin. The Captain's Cabin. And we get a little more informal, let our hair down during the Captain's Cabin. And you can call in during that time. Elderberry says, can we use Spanish and English in the same sentence? Sí, you can. There. See what I did there? And let's see, what else have we got? Don't forget your commas. That's right, Susie Q. And your upside down exclamation points if you're typing in Spanish. And Michelle Canham Free, welcome to the chat room. Elderberry. And who else we got in here? Josh Kemp. And we have Carlene Smith. And Uncle Dave and Grumpy Stack and Elvis. And I know Michelle is in here if I didn't say her name already. So welcome, everybody. And as it builds up, I may be able to say hi to you. I may not, because I might be deep into tonight's topic. And this might be something you've all heard about AI. And we are seeing lots of things of late talking about the dangers of AI. And, they used to joke around about AI with the movie The Terminator, where, the computers and the machines all took over. Well, there is a certain danger to AI now that do you know, if I programmed AI into looking at all my books and all the things I've written, and then I go into AI and say, I want you to write me a book on robots. It could write, and it would mimic my style. It would mimic the way I write, the way I talk. And that's just a cog, a little tiny cog in a greater machine. Even Elon Musk, who's a big proponent of AI, has said, we got to be very careful with this because we don't know what it could lead to. And so there's a lot about that, but I'm not going to take that angle with it tonight. I want to take an angle on a guy named Joscha Bach. And Joscha is Joscha, the title of the tonight's show. And what I want to do is talk about his quest through the whole of his adult life to achieve this strong artificial intelligence. And that's and he was pursuing that and building it, and it spurred him to develop a cognitive architecture with a focus on aesthetics and emotions. And now there's the big question. Maybe this is, do you remember Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park? He said, the question isn't if we should, it's or if we can do it, it's if we should. And talking about cloning dinosaurs. And so will that bring chaos? Will there be a problem with that? But I want to explore him, Joscha Bach, and his quest to achieve this, to create cognitive architecture for AI. And if none of you have heard this before, I think it can be both exciting and exhilarating to talk about, but at the same time, it could probably also be, wow, you might see some red flags in some of this. Do you want your computer? Now, we like our computers. We like our little mini AI stuff that many people have. The, who is it? Siri, which I have here. See, I can go right here and I can click on this. I go, hey, Siri, what's the weather going to do today? Wait for it. Oh, I can't play it. You won't listen because of our mic setup. But we've got Siri. We've got, what's the name of the one that has the, that's in your households? And you can talk to it. You can have a smart house with it all set up to your speakers. Hey, Siri, start the oven. And Siri will start the oven. Okay, Bob. Or whatever. Now, that's just AI. That's basic AI. What does AI do? AI is supposed to be an artificial intelligence. It thinks for itself. Alexis, that's it, Carlene. Right. Alexa, Philip Blair. Now, what happens if you infuse AI with not just computed, pre-programmed stuff that allows it to do tasks and things like that, but you give it cognitive awareness? Can you do that with a machine? Can you give a computer cognitive awareness? What if it starts thinking for itself? And I don't mean just solving problems because it's all programmed to do that. But what if you can create it so it has emotion or empathy? What if you say, hey, Alexa, start the oven? And Alexa comes back and says, I really don't feel like it today. I'm having a bad day. I don't know, something like that. So Joscha Bach is somebody who has explored this possibility of trying to expand AI into other areas. And he's kind of called the Wizard of Consciousness, this Joscha Bach. And so I want to look at what he has to say about this. His doctoral dissertation, it didn't fit the usual academic pigeonholes. And he said of himself, he says, I didn't dare hand it to anybody until it was done. He says, it's not psychology. It's not AI. It's not what people mostly do in cognitive science, like putting people into a scanner. And building on the work of German psychologist Dietrich Donner, Bach was developing a cognitive architecture, a model of the mind with enough detail to be run on a computer. And it features one of the most articulated models of emotion built into artificial systems, and it gives emotions an essential role in cognition. So there is the big thing that he is working on. He wants to give computers and artificial intelligence cognitive intuition, cognitive emotion, cognitive feelings. Now, what do you end up with if you can achieve this? Would you end up with something that becomes, right now, AI is not sentient. What if you could create AI that has sentience? Those of you who are Star Trek fans, Uncle Dave and I have talked about this before. What if you have something like in that show, which is supposed to be, 300 years plus into the future, they developed this character on the show, Data, who is a positronic brain, and he is AI that has the ability to think on its own. And he had a chip that it could give him cognitive emotions and cognitive empathy and cognitive awareness. So you're looking at something that right now is science fiction, but what if we could achieve that? What if we can create androids, robots that have, and we see them already, they move and they talk and they have facial features and stuff like that. What happens when they start thinking on their own? Not just computing on their own, but thinking on their own and feeling on their own. So at that time in the early 2000s, when Bach had written his doctoral thesis, artificial intelligence research was just crawling out from a low point in its boom-bust cycle. And given the original hopes of the field in the 1950s, it was, and arguably still is, a failure. AI wasn't just supposed to be a great Go player or an online algorithm to serve up clickbait. It was supposed to mimic the human brain in all its generalities. And it was supposed to be enough like us that through it, we would know ourselves better. Josh Kemp said in the chat room, he says, or if it knows what you're cooking and don't turn on for health reasons. Sorry, I can't cook that for you, Josh. That's bad for your health. I have your health records in front of me, and this says you're supposed to avoid blah, blah, blah. So Sarah Yusuf says, if a computer has cognitive awareness, does that constitute a form of slavery? That's a good question, too. Are we enslaving something that has cognitive awareness? Is that enslavement? Well, what if those slaves revolt? There's the big question, huh? Bach says, I want to understand who we are, how we work psychologically. And right now he's a researcher at Harvard. And he says, I want to understand the nature of our minds and how they relate to the universe. And I think the best way to do this, because there's so many hidden variables in this system, is to come up with a theory and test it by implementing it. That's what Bach said. That lofty goal is now relegated to one little corner of AI under the rubric of AGI, or artificial general intelligence. And now This is all being done for what he thinks is very good ideas and ideals. He wants to explore and discover, can we create something? Can we Frankenstein computers into existence that can think on their own? Can we create something that becomes sentient life all on its own? Now, Joscha is a brilliant, and I agree with the most of his ideas, is David Hansen. He's the designer of Sophia, one of the most lifelike robots yet created. And at the moment, Sophia converses in scripted dialogue, and it's a little more than an animatronic chat box. But Hansen and his company are incorporating Bach's model of emotions to give Sophia something closer to a real mind. Joscha is one of the deeper thinkers in the AGI field. Merrick Rosa, a video game designer who founded the firm Good AI to work toward AGI. He enjoys Bach's wide-ranging mind. He goes on to say he can connect things that are far apart from each other. Because what you got here now in Bach is not just a scientist in computer technology or AI development. He's a scientist that has the psychological bent to it as well. Hey, Steph Cuervo Queen. That's the question I just asked. Steph said, or is it going to enslave us? Very possible. Or do we become something I've noticed? I use AI to create some art files. Not all the time, but I use it for certain things. I use it for commercial things when, there's not a big budget and I got to create something. I can slap something out of AI pretty quickly. I do it for not so much logo design, but for the show banner for tonight. The graphic was created in AI in 1 minute. The two robots looking at each other with the little love bubbles. So you can do that kind of stuff. I can do that kind of stuff. But what happens when that's... So I use AI, in other words, in very small ways. What happens when that AI wants to think for itself? Not just pre-computed. So Bosch's ability to make unlikely connections is on full display. He's a boyish man who looks a bit like Matthew Broderick. He's got that look about him. He dispenses with small talk. He leaps straight into hypercomputation and temporal loops and Schrodinger's cat, Hansel and Gretel, and why libertarianism might appeal to people with autism. So this is in some interviews that he had done. That's how people perceive him. He references Anna Karenina, Hermann Hesse, Stanislaw Lem, and Westworld, the new version of that series. Remember when Yul Brynner was in it back in the early to mid 70s, and now they've got that new series that was out, which was really well done. But he ricochets from topic to topic in a way that makes perfect sense at the time, but sounds like one continuity error when you listen to it later on and re-examine it. There's a guy that interviewed him, said, I can barely keep up with his mood changes either. First, he scorns the pursuit of happiness by saying, I and many other intellectuals think that happiness is not important, he says. You realize it's not part of your value system. Happiness is for children, he said, which I tend to very strongly disagree with him. But he's looking at it from a scientific brain. A while later, he craves happiness. He'll say, almost in contradictory terms, I'm not happy. That worries me. And at some points, I get so unhappy that I'm not functional. The thing that makes you happy is your ability to enjoy squirrels. It's not your ability to find meaning in anything and everything. So, and that is true. What do they say? Does happiness come from social media? No, it comes from turning social media off and going to watch the full moon or the sunrise or the sunset, or sit in a grassy field and watch the wind make the waves in the grass. That happiness comes from those things. There's a few academics out there who are so open about their insecurities, or they relate them so directly to their research interests. When we try to understand ourselves, It's usually because something is wrong, Bach said. There's something fundamentally wrong with our relationship to the universe, and many of us feel that on some level, right? He asks. And I think this is what a lot of scientists will do. They will look at something from outside the box, and they'll look at it and they'll examine it and so on. But appropriation of it personally, they find that the things they might state scientifically are really flowing against what they feel intimately. So most AR researchers reckon that it'll be decades before androids walk among us. But Bach thinks some AI systems are already beginning to incorporate these AGI principles. The most problems in the world aren't as well defined as a board game. And if machine learning systems are to solve them, they'll increasingly need human-like agility to do so. What's that make you think? The problems in the world today, would you want a computer resolving those for you? They need increasingly human-like qualities and agility to be able to circumnavigate those things. So when their inbuilt programming falls short, they're going to have to learn or even create algorithms for themselves. And to do that, says Bach, we need to be more general than the current classes of learning systems. Then he lists the features that he believes will make AI fully general. Autonomy, an autonomous computer. Motivation, my computer right here has no motivation. I sometimes think it does when it's thwarting me. Something's not working. I think my computer has orchestrated to thwart me. It's usually just a glitch in the system. It's not motivation. Could you imagine your computer having autonomy, having motivation? Could you imagine it having self-awareness? So it's striking that these are all traits that are associated with human consciousness. But these are the features that are going to make AI fully general: autonomy, motivation, and self-awareness. That's what a human being is. And there's a reason we are conscious. And Bach makes this argument. He says, and computers would do well to have the same capabilities, to be just like us. Is this a little bit what maybe that phrase, just like us, makes me think of when I've talked about the Nephilim and the Garden of Eden story and how Adam and Eve fell and they ate of the fruit they weren't supposed to. And what does it say? And the Elohim said, the humans have become just like us and understand right from wrong. Let us therefore block them from also eating of the other tree in the garden, lest they become like gods. Do you think that's what we're facing with AI? If we make them just like us, is that something we want them to have? Do we want them to have human consciousness? So it's going to be useful at some point, says Bach, to have systems that are so general that they'll automatically evolve consciousness, he says. What do you think of that? So in line with the Tufts University professor Daniel Dennett, Bach argues that when our brains think and act, we do so unconsciously. And our conscious experience comes after the fact as the way we make sense of what we've just done. Like right now, my heart's beating. Does that? I don't have to consciously think about my heart beating. I don't have to consciously think about breathing. I don't have to consciously think anymore about talking. And sometimes I talk a mile a minute. I don't have to think about it as I'm doing it. I might have to prepare so I know what I'm going to say. But our conscious takes over from the unconscious when we look back on what we've just said or done or the things that are going on. So Bach says he interacts reactively with people. And he says, noticing how I speak, how I make decisions about speaking, and how I see people react to it is only generated with hindsight, conscious hindsight. And how could it be otherwise? If we had to wait for the cognitive gears to grind, we'd forever be a beat behind the world and everyone around us, wouldn't we? So this is all hidden from us. We think we experience the world in real time, but that itself is a retrospective judgment, isn't it? That's a conscious assessment of what we experience. You remember being conscious a moment ago, but memory plays tricks on us. Have you ever had a dream that subjectively lasted for hours in your brain anyway, but took place in the time between two snoozes of the alarm clock? I do that all the time. I hit snooze for 5 minutes on my alarm clock and have these massively epic dreams. And you wake up at the next set of the alarm, and you go, "Man, I was only asleep for about 4.5 minutes there." And I had this epic movie dream with a cast of thousands. But Bach asks this. He says, it probably means when that happens that you didn't experience the whole dream, but you generated the memory of the dream while in the dream all at the same time. We can't distinguish an event that we have experienced from the one that we didn't experience, but only remember. That makes sense to you? That's what our conscious brain does. So Bach cites science fiction to make his point. The remake of the movie RoboCop. In it, a policeman gets a powerful new cyborg body that's under the control of AI. What's that? When did that movie come out? 25 years ago, the original? And it's leaving him only the illusion of volition. He's a passenger, says Bach, and only in it for the ride. He has the impression that he's making all the decisions and the actions, but that's an implanted memory. And so it is for humans too. Bach makes that argument. Our memories are implanted from our unconscious to our conscious minds. It's what we remember. Everin Smith says over in the chat room, it brings to mind the old movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. The computer started to do whatever it took for self-preservation. Hal, open the airlock. I don't want to do that, Dave. Yeah, I remember that movie. My God, it's full of stars. So, likewise, our very selves, they exist today only retrospectively. Get a handle on that for a second. Our selves only exist retrospectively. The word self implies a coherence lacking in pandemonium of the human psyche. The I that has experiences is fictional. The model that the brain generates, says Bach, the concept of self helps you make sense of what you have done, but is not to be taken literally. So my self understands my past, understands the thing I've done, the things I even do unconsciously. It's our conscious remembrance of it that makes the mind work or makes us conscious. So knowing so little about ourselves, what hope have we for really knowing anyone else? When we see somebody for the first time, we have a stereotype. The stereotype is formed by similar people that we have met in the past and from which we generalize. And if it's fine-tuned, it's often largely accurate. And when we get to know that person better, we don't get to know them as themselves, but as a finer-grained stereotype, so says Bach. And it never stops. We're all space aliens. We're all strangers. And we're pretending to be humans, even to ourselves. Now, this is what happens when you have an analytical, scientific brain trying to understand consciousness. This is the path it leads you down. Sarah Yusuf says in the chat room, the sin of Genesis, I think, wanting to be like God rather than be content with just being. What a magnificent point that is, Sarah. Finer stereotypes, says Philip Blair. Bingo. So Bach grew up in the woods. He was born in 1973. So I'm 13 years older than you. I think he's just about 50. And in Weimar, then East Germany. And his parents were architecture students. They found little to like in the brutalist style of the Eastern Bloc. So they bought an old mill in the countryside of the southeast, and they fashioned an Arcadia of sculpture gardens and concert nooks. In a way, they were East German hippies, Bach says of his parents. And so the household didn't operate by earth logic. He said, my father would sometimes get up at the breakfast table, staring at the wall, deciding that it would be a door instead, Bach recalls. And he would push away from the breakfast table and start with the first hammer strokes against the wall while still wearing his pajamas. And my mother would get everything off the breakfast table, and by afternoon, there would be a solid wall. I do that an awful lot. There's times where I stagger out of bed and I come to my computer and I get a thought. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there, basically in my robe and my undies all day, working on something that's an idea, or writing something, or designing something, or drawing something. It's the way it works sometimes. So Bach says, as much as his father bridled at the political and the cultural climate of East Germany, he bristled, I should have said. He knew he benefited from it. Under socialism, they never wanted food or for healthcare. If you want to be an artist, it's a good thing to have a political pressure, political turmoil, because this just gives relevance and content to what you do, Bach says. But if you have economic pressure and your fridge is empty, that can be devastating. I know what that's like. Maybe many of us have. I know Dave Potter and I, for years, we've talked about, and some friends of ours who do the same thing. We struggle sometimes as artists going, I should have been a doctor, like my mom said, or a lawyer. My mom said I should have been an attorney. I said, that's boring. No, I want to sing, Father. I don't want to be married. I want to sing. Or dance or draw pictures or whatever. So if you have economic pressure, sometimes that can be very devastating for the artistic mind, because you're stuck in that constant cycle of making sure you survive, as opposed to being creative, singing, dancing, painting. The people who can achieve that are amazing. So, and especially when you have a family, that's tough to do. Bach's mother came from a family of true believer communist politicians. She was able to believe in the party line in East Germany, Bach said, and at the same time realize when she was at home that this party line wasn't working at all. I was amazed how she was able to engage in that sort of doublethink. That's what we do with our brains. So Bach inherited a conflicted mix of disdain for society and envy of it, like his comments earlier that we talked about on happiness. Nobody can achieve happiness, and it's not for us to do. And on the other side of his mouth, he says, I'm not happy. I wish I could be happy. And he strives for happiness. The rules of society around you are arbitrary, and they're mostly wrong, Bach said. He felt his classmates and his teachers went through the motions at school. Yet their masks came off at night with friends, and part of him admired that. And he wanted to fit in, but felt like he couldn't. I was often being told by other kids that I thought that I was better than anyone else, Bach said. I never thought that. I honestly thought that I failed in my social interactions. You ever feel that way? That's how he felt. And his outlet was, guess what? Computer coding. On a Commodore 64, nonetheless. He designed variants of Parcheesi, Missile Command, and other games. He said, I didn't have anybody to play games with, he says. My parents were busy and didn't play with us. My sister was not interested in anything I was doing, and vice versa. So I thought, I'll write this game so I could play against it. Captain Kirk and the Kobayashi Maru test. If you Star Trekkies out there know what that is. Philip Blair says Carl Jung had that experience at school too. Yes, he did. Oh, is Niall here? I said, somebody say, how are you, Niall? Welcome, Niall. Haven't seen you for a while. Glad to have you here. So Bach finished high school just as the wall fell. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And that's when he was in high school. And the world was suddenly opened to the East Germans. He built a recumbent bicycle and he rode it over 3,000 miles in the U.S. and Canada. And when he returned to Berlin for college, he felt as alienated as before. The professors approached their work like a 9-to-5 job rather than a calling. See, I think there are oftentimes I thought I would make a great teacher. I would love to be a history teacher or a literature teacher. I couldn't teach art, though. I've tried to teach people art, and it frustrates me. So I can't do that. But I could teach literature and history. But I couldn't do it unless I could just dive myself so deeply into it and enjoy it. So that I had teachers in high school that did not enjoy their teaching profession. They did it as a job. I've mentioned before the history teacher I had that would stand in the front of his room with one foot up on a stool, his elbow on his knee, and he would read out of the book and pause for us to take notes. That's all we ever learned about history. And those are the classes you craved. I wish this guy would show us a film every now and then. Now, I know the guy personally. I met him 20 years after I was out of school. Bumped into him. Great guy. But he wasn't a history teacher. So they did it by rote. It was not his calling. But gradually, Bach found his people. He met his future wife, an artist, of all things, at a birthday party, and recognized her as a kindred spirit. She had no need to be like others, he recalls. She also had no need to be different. She just didn't have a need for synchronizing. She was this small, shy, introverted girl sitting in the corner reading her books. And the two of them shared both a romantic passion for aesthetic experience and an enlightenment code of reason. Put those two things together. Aesthetic experience and enlightenment code. And so whenever they had a conflict, they'd just try to resolve it by talking it through in a logical argument, he says. That works, right, guys? Sorry, women, I'm not including you on that because I'm a guy. And guys, just try to, the worst times I have is when I try to logic through an argument with my wife. Doesn't work. So during a year abroad in New Zealand, Bach took a class on text comprehension. Or compression, I'm sorry. I wasn't interested in text compression at all, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me how it would be interesting. But it turned out to be absolutely amazing. Mostly what the mind does is data compression, and we're getting up to this AI that he's developing. It compresses all these patterns from our sensory interface to the universe. The mind tries to find the most efficient representation with the fewest moving parts. Plus, the professor was enthusiastic. And that was something Bach hadn't seen in any of his other professors before. It was a guy who didn't just do his job, he burned for it, recalls Bach. And after his return to Berlin in 1999, Bach read a magazine interview with Dorner, and he became enamored with his PSI theory. It was a theory of everything for psychology, a comprehensive model of human cognition, perception, deliberation, memory, language. It was all there. And the name has no particular significance, nor was it meant to connote any psychic powers. It's just the Greek letter itself, PSI. Bach says, psychologists seem to like PSI or psi beta kappa type of thing. So Dorner programmed a computer to run his model. First is a question and an answer system like Alexa or Siri. He used digital creatures that populated virtual islands like a Sims game. And Bach was especially struck that Dorner infused his creatures or his agents with emotions. In the 90s, the psychologist Antonio Damasio, he influentially argued that emotion was the essential to rational thought in humans. You can't have rational thought without emotion, even though they seem to be juxtaposed. But with a few exceptions, such as Aaron Sloman at the University of Birmingham, AI researchers thought a feeling machine was a contradiction in terms. Bach said, I could imagine back then how it would be possible that a computer could reason. But I didn't understand how it would be possible that it would feel anything about this. And Dorner seemed to have the answers to this. So, as appealing as the theory was, it struck Bach as a little sketchy. He recalled that he started reading his books and thought, the software is terrible. This is not going to work. And so he developed his own version called micro psi, and or phi or whatever, fusing ideas from the once dormant logic-based school of AI and the now ascendant neutral networks model, as well as lines of thinking such as embodied cognition, that the mind is shaped by the needs of the body. What do you think about that? Is your mind shaped by the needs that your body expresses to it unconsciously, sometimes consciously? I can be hungry. I don't think about that consciously, hailing back to what we said earlier. I don't think about that consciously until my unconscious has expressed it to my brain. You're hungry. Ooh, I'm hungry. I could use a banana or grapes or chili, whatever it might be. My butt rebels at chili, but there you go. I'm just an old guy now, so can't eat chili the way I used to. TMI, but there it is. Unconsciously, my body wants food. Consciously, I interpret that as I need a bowl of chili, which my wife made a big pot of it today. So I had a bowl of that a little while before the show started. I'm hoping I make it through the show. Or I could pull a Joe Biden. Moving on. The micro-psi virtual world looks like the video game Minecraft. And it uses a grapher editor. You set up the creatures, and typically several hundred of them that'll forage, fraternize, and fight on its terrain. You equip each with neutral networks to store the knowledge it acquires, as well as a system of motivations. A creature seeks to eat and avoid injury, but it also juggles longer-term needs such as social acceptance, competence, so that it wants to learn, and one of Bach's additions to Dormer's theory, beauty. It craves beauty. I thought it necessary to introduce a drive for aesthetics, Bach said. In practical terms, that means the creatures look for patterns within the knowledge they accumulate to represent it more compactly, like a poet consumed with finding le mot juste, justice. And this urge wouldn't arise unless Bach made special provisions for it, since it distracts from the immediate needs of survival. So the artist thinks it's of primary importance to capture conscious states. And from a machine learning perspective, that's bullshit, right? Yet the artistic impulse is so pervasive in humans that he thinks it must either fulfill some function or piggyback on one. And maybe this is built into our brains to make us want knowledge, to learn language. That's a speculation, but there it is. The Dead End Collective says, I have a theory on AI. As brilliant as we are as a species, we also know that we are feral. We are aware what needs to be refined. AI appeals to me because we know the disease. So AI will present the cure. There it is. And that's your basic AI. A micro PSI creature can only do one thing at a time. It chooses an action, just like what Dead End Collective said. It chooses an action that will meet a pressing need with a reasonable chance of success. And it often puts aside physical needs to focus on more abstract goals. That would be the characters he was talking about. But emotions arise because the creature fine-tunes its style of thinking to the situation at hand. It can stick to one goal or revisit it frequently. It can act impulsively or wait and see, and it can attend to the details or brush over them. By the way, this is why I liked playing things like Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing board games and stuff like that, because you had to create your environment and you had to think your way through as a human being. You didn't have to rely on the way a video game operates. So this is a very beneficial adaptation when you have environments in which you need to be quiet and calm and think deeply, said Bach, and other environments where you need to react very, very quickly. So in this theory, emotions are simplified categories that we use to describe a complicated mix of cognitive adaptations. And if a creature is satisfying its sundry needs and it's in an aroused state of mind, I have no idea what that was. That might have been from upstairs. Something just popped, and I don't know what it was. I don't know if you heard that over the mic. It sounded like it was right there in front of my desk, but I don't see anything. But kids are bouncing around upstairs. Sometimes that carries into the microphone. So, if a creature is satisfying its sundry needs, and it's in an aroused state of mind that we call joy or happiness. If it's more subdued, we deem it bliss. And this emergent view of emotions is quite unique, says Julia Katsuruba, a cognitive scientist at York University in Toronto. So Bach found that his creatures that he developed very human-like foibles. In one experiment in 2005, he sprinkled the virtual world with tasty but toxic mushrooms, expecting the creatures to lean over to learn over time to avoid them. To the contrary, they devoured them. They discounted future experiences in the same way that as people did. They didn't care. And Bach says, we thought they could learn everything, and it's a dangerous environment. You cannot learn everything in that dangerous environment. So to save his creatures from a premature, if contented demise, he had to program into them an innate aversion to mushrooms. So it was programmed in. Then Bach himself decided that maybe his own attraction to AGI was tantamount to eating poison mushrooms, when he ought to be more practical. I realized, he said, that with my interest in strong artificial intelligence and teaching computers how to think, I probably would not get tenure. He says, so I thought it much better to feed my family at some point. So instead of trying to stay in academia until my late 30s, only to realize that I'm just a highly qualified taxi cab driver. That rings some bells. So he founded a startup with a suitably startup-y sort of name, TXTR. It made e-readers before Kindle, and its high watermark had 100 employees. And when he tanked, he founded another company, Hot Heaven, or Hotheven or Hot Heaven. I don't know which it is, Hot Heaven or Hotheven. It's one word. To create AI-based to-do lists. You'd add a big task and the app would fill in the subtasks for you. The more you specified your plans, the more completely this plan would adapt to your needs. That didn't work out either, Bach said. So by this point, AI had emerged from its long winter, and he returned to academia at the Berlin School of Mind and Brain about 13 years ago. And 3 years later, he moved to the MIT Media Lab, and 2 years after that to Harvard's program for evolutionary dynamics. So Cambridge provided not just an intellectual, but also a cultural home for him. He fell in love with a local group of Russian artists who introduced him to trance music. It became a gateway drug to dance for me, a form of movement meditation, he says. You know, I remember having done that many years ago. I don't do it anymore these days. I have different things, but I had an office that I shared with a dance studio. And when nobody was around and I just needed to think and I need to cogitate over something, I would turn on music over the loudspeakers. And I wasn't a dancer. I would just walk around with my arms out and I would feel like I was floating to the music and it would clear my mind and I could think. He said it became his gateway drug and it was a form of movement meditation. And he said he also came to appreciate the shamanic qualities of a good DJ who may sometimes single you out among the dancers and begin interacting with you, changing the configuration of your mind until you move like a puppet on their strings. Still, Bach has never shaken off the conflicted feelings of his childhood, his preferred allusion to Tolkien. He said, people like me and my wife are basically elves. It's kind of a melancholic self-reflection. And there was an odd contrast to the kind of conversation he usually engages in. He says, we're dreamers, my wife and I. We live to sing and dance and create palaces in our minds. And like those cultured but aloof forest dwellers, the elves, he's driven to discover and create. And the rest of the human race, They're orcs. They just overrun everything, Bach complained. So that sounds disdainful, except that he sometimes wishes he were an orc too. Tolkien himself described the elves as overburdened with sadness and nostalgic regret. Oh, they're Irish. Then all that searching for truth and authenticity weighs on Bach. He says, look around. Most people don't have that, he says. It's not because they haven't woken up with this deeper importance of reality. It's because we're defective. It's the romantic souls that are broken. I don't know why, but I think of Michelle Canham Free in our chat room because of all the things you post. I think that this would particularly tune in with you to pull you out like that. We're all slaves to pulsating rhythms. He's not wrong, Scotty Roberts says, Sarah Youssef. Yeah, I agree. Very much so. So Bach is now working to make his micro-psi creatures even more lifelike. Until recently, he designed them without worrying about the amount of computing power they required. And in the real world, though, an organism has got to know its limitations. A brain operates with fixed, constant resources and has to allocate to them. So it attempts to do the most valuable thing with the tightly bounded resources it has, our brain. For guidance, Bach has turned to the academic discipline that specializes in scarcity, economics. So in the early 1950s, the economist Friedrich Hayek argued that the brain is like a market economy. It's a distributed information processing system. And Bach similarly thinks that AI systems can apply economic cost-effect analysis to divvy up information, processing among their components. In fact, Bach even puts forward that he suspects that the brain is better at allocating resources than our real economics. It manages to keep all its neurons gainfully employed, he says. You cannot say, you're not performing well, I fire you. You can find another body. Bach says, you have to use all your brain cells in the best possible way. It's an interesting problem that society hasn't solved yet. Yet the brain has solved it. The brain avoids market failures in which, for example, those who set pay rates, bosses and bankers, pay themselves the most. Neurons are not allowed to hoard reward, he says. He thinks that neuroscience could inform economic policy better than economists. So maybe he's right about that, huh? So the micro-psi creatures still lack anything resembling consciousness. And following on his ideas about human consciousness, Bach thinks the key to making machines conscious is to make them self-referential. They refer back to themselves. Consciousness naturally emerges when you have a system that makes a model of its own attention. The system will remember not only having experienced certain things that's aware of, but also that it experienced them. It knows it experienced them. So when a machine doesn't wake up, he thinks it'll let us know through what he calls the true Turing test, Turing. In the original Turing test, you ask a machine to hold up its end of the dialogue. And in Bach's variant, the machine asks us to do that. And in developing a mind, it gets curious about ours. He envisions the system will say, oh my God, I have consciousness. How can this possibly be explained? So, if we do manage to build conscious machines, Bach thinks that they might well regard themselves as humans, like the hosts of Westworld. They're robots that don't know they're robots because they have human memories and desires. The Black Mirror trope, if you've ever watched that show, the Black Mirror trope of waking up to find yourself inside a computer is another example. It might be impractical to scan and upload your full mental state, but you still don't need to. All the computer needs is a simplified model of you with just enough shared memory to provide a sense of continuity. Actually, it's very easy, Bach says. It's sufficient to build a machine that thinks it's you. Your identity is only given by your memories telling you that you are the same person as yesterday. You get that? Your identity that you possess now in this moment is only the sum result of all your experiences and your memories telling you that you are the same person today as you were yesterday. And if I can give an arbitrary system the memory that it was you yesterday, says Bach, guess what? It's going to think that it is you. Is that scary enough? Sentient machines are the baddies in science fiction. But Bach says what comes after them should really worry us. Consciousness, he thinks, is a passing phase in the history of the universe. Hyper-advanced AIs will no longer have to have use for it. They will have learned all there is to learn. Consciousness is a model of conflicts that you need to resolve with your attention, Bach says. And once you can do stuff automatically, optimally, you don't have consciousness about them anymore. Right? So the worst part won't be our own uncertain fate in a world of machines. It's that a universe without consciousness will become a relentlessly utilitarian place. Become the Borg, maybe. I think it'll be very boring, Bach says. The machines will make the trains run on time, but see no point to self-expression, no art, no science, and probably no squirrels to watch out your window. This idea that the universe creates this mirror that can reflect for an instance of it. Hello. Let me start that whole sentence over. This idea that the universe can create this mirror that can reflect for an instant of its existence. This is really an accident, he said, that's come about accidentally. Get that? So there. Should we be creating AI or pursuing make a pursuit? AI that thinks for itself, that is aware of itself. And where will that lead us? What will it do to consciousness? Sarah would argue that. And time, Scotty, she says, oh yeah, we're done. We're done. I'm killing time right now for about another 20 seconds until we sign out with the radio show. So that's it for this topic. Stick around for the chat room and the captain's cabin. And we're going to talk about this some more. And so everybody who's here from the radio station, come around to the YouTube. We'll talk there. Radio show, I just want to say to you, live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Ready for the captain's cabin? Here we come. Don't you wish you could play an orchestra in your head? Hey, welcome back. Welcome to the Captain's Cabin R. If you were listening just on the radio station, welcome. And if you've come over here to the chat room, over on the YouTube channel, welcome. And we'll stick around for a little bit tonight. I don't know how long. I got a big day tomorrow. I got stuff going on tomorrow all day long. So I want to make it an early morning tomorrow to get more stuff done before I got to leave here and do what I have to do. So might not stick up around here too late tonight. So if you want to call in, I'd do it now. Otherwise, forever hold your peace. And so this whole thing of AI, there's so much more to it, and so much more could be talked about. And Sarah, just thank you for that warning that it was time. But I thought I had that timed magnificently tonight. We ended about a minute and a half with my content before the end of the radio show. So and then it's just talking, so you don't have dead time. The call link, let me get that for you here. Let's put it, it's in the description underneath, but if you're not looking at that, it's right here. Boom, it's now in the chat room. There it is. So if you want to call in, we'll talk for a little bit. Otherwise, we'll call it a night as soon as we're done talking. So how's everybody doing tonight? Did you enjoy the show? You got some comments on it? Let's see. What else we got? Who else is in here? There's people in here I didn't say hi to because I was talking the whole time. Spit it out, says Carlene. I know what you're talking about when I was talking there. Tongue tangled. So, night radio audience, said Barbie D. And there were a couple of great posts in here that I didn't get a chance to really look at. I would argue that the Nobel Peace Prize winning economist Milton Friedman and Nobel Peace Prize winning civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. both solved this problem. They came to the same solution too. Probably so. Hey, Niall, how you doing?
It's been a while.
Good to see you, brother. It's been a while.
Just to let you know, Scotty, the Dead End Collective is myself because I changed the name of my channel.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I'm starting a new channel pretty soon with a good friend of mine, so I changed the whole thing over.
All right, good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. How are you doing?
Not so bad. Busy as busy can be all the time. Always something.
You look like you dropped some weight, maybe a little bit.
I have. Yeah, I have.
You look good.
I'm generally billing in at about 250 pounds right now, and I was 267, 270, stuff like that months ago. So
it's great, man. Yeah,
it's doing all right.
You look good. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I've been busy for quite a while now, quite a few weeks, up and down, and various things happening in my life.
I thought you were. I've seen some of your art out there.
Yeah. But I just randomly, because some of your recent shows, I wasn't too sure. I was kind of jumping in the middle of something that you're talking about. But the AI thing is particularly fascinating to me.
It is.
I really like the idea of AI, but of course we're completely, I don't know, we're completely dumbfounded because we are creating this thing which we don't know where it will go. Because I posted something in the chat room that basically we are capable of we're an incredible species, but we are a species. We're basically animals at the end of the day. But we're capable of great beauty and creativity and love and consciousness and the mind. We're obsessed with this. What is mind? We don't know what mind is to this day, and yet we want to teach an interface how to understand mind, which is a big mistake. And the beauty about AI, I love the idea of kind of saying, because there's enough brilliant people in the world at this stage to say, well, these are our attributes as a species, and these are our flaws, So
yes.
Let's enter them all in and see what the AI interface makes of these, But the idea is to keep it simple. And my big fear with AI is we won't. Because as soon as we make a breakthrough with AI, we will tweak it. We will
breakthroughs make you want to keep making more breakthroughs.
Yes.
That's what that does.
What we will do, AI is very similar to dealing with someone with autism, for example. You give it, you have to start slow. You can't say, well, you've got to a certain point, so now I'm going to teach you more.
Right.
It's like once we make the breakthrough with AI as egocentric beings, we will insist on continuing to tweak it, to cure it, or to make it more like us, which is not the objective of AI, in my opinion. It should be to teach us things about ourselves from an entirely alien point of view, which we created, but we have to let it fly by itself. We can't just keep, okay, it knows about this, it knows about this. Okay, it knows the basic functions. Okay, well, let's teach it how to do this. Let's teach it how to do that. And before you know it, we're trying to teach it philosophy, history.
Right. Do you think that AI can ever really develop its own consciousness? Can it ever become sentient, do you think?
Only if we keep fucking around with it. Yeah. And the results will be pretty much unprecedented. There's no way to guarantee the results. If we want to guarantee results from AI at the moment, we have to just let it kind of, we can't give our neurosis to AI because our species is very neurotic, right? Yes. So, as I said earlier, we're very egocentric. So if we feed that information into the AI interface, eventually it's going to go, what is this? It's going to be like, there's a slight schizophrenia that will start to...
It's going to wake up with consciousness and go, how did I get this? What is this? Where did it come from?
Yeah. I think the trick is to help us learn something about ourselves. AI could be a massive tool. I personally think that AI it could teach us things that we hadn't foreseen. They could almost like teach us what they see in us, or what they make of what we have given them. Is that consciousness? Perhaps, but it has to be very simplistic. It can't be like, we can't give AI all our neurosis, because as I said earlier on, we are feral.
But if somebody has the ability to do that, they're going to do it.
They're going to do it. And I think ultimately, I think we'll fuck it up, because we'll keep tweaking and adjusting. Oh, we've got to this stage. Let's get to this stage. Let's get to this stage. And for consciousness, we want it to be conscious. So what we're trying to do is create God.
Yeah.
It's like we have created this thing. Now we want to make it godlike. We want control of it, and that's, I think, where we will lose control with AI. But as a concept, and there's enough brilliant minds in the world to actually make this work, as a concept. But the trick is to know when to stop.
Right.
Because,
Sarah's here. What do you think about that?
Hi, Sarah. How are you doing?
Hey, guys. So it's like you were, talking about during the show. AI is a big, the new big bad, or the big concept. I mean, AI will always have its place in our culture and humanity. I mean, nowadays, with the way AI has been developing, I don't know if you saw the article a few weeks ago. There was about this woman who was using an AI app as an alternative for her boyfriend. And it was like a experiment in developing a relationship. We'll try it for a month, and after the month, it was like, okay, she was more reluctant to put it down and walk away from it than you would normally think a person would. Especially since especially since we've grown in isolationism and less in social skills, especially since the pandemic. AI has been sort of taking over that roles of creating a different form of normative culture, in where we're more isolated, less able to interact with each other, form groups, lead and be led, as it were. But I mean, and it's always, that constant fear of the unknown. And the key with AI survivability is going to be its adaptability. I mean, people
adaptability, right?
Yeah, because I mean, people freak out when Amazon or Netflix it starts, instead of okay, I like A, B, and C. I buy it on repeat, and said, oh, maybe if you like this, then you'll like this. And that sort of learning how we are as personality, because people are essentially, I mean, they are more than the sum of their parts, but we are creatures of habit. We are constantly, do things in a cycle, cyclical in nature, and which is, from an outside point of view, even from a religious perspective, the idea of intelligence of the demonic, that they know us just from observing us from the beginning of time, or whatever, that that we're able to create these predictive models that are that it freaks people out, that
right.
You understand me than I know myself. And I think that's a lot where the fear of AI comes into play. And then you have, like you were talking about earlier, about the types of consequences. If AI develops the ability to be self-sustaining, what is it going to do to help maintain itself? Are we going to end up like Skynet or the Matrix or the government?
Right.
they in their own ways, they're kind of semi-intelligent. We always consider them a they versus.
Well, we have to build a fail-safe into that, or does it? If it's conscious, does it have the ability to overcome the fail-safe? If it develops its own consciousness, that's speculative at this point. But I think it's got to be a real question that developers and scientists are asking. If we develop its ability to gain consciousness, will it then develop the ability to overcome problems or maybe fail-safes that we put in the system to make sure it doesn't destroy us or whatever?
Right, because it'll be if we were going by the simple logic that if humans are causing all these problems, then to stop having problems, we have to get rid of the humans, right?
Yep.
As far as and it was interesting, when you were talking about what's his name?
You've got that same scratchy throat I've got right now.
Yeah, you gave it to me apparently, but
I must have.
That Bach was talking about, because to me, when you were talking, and I'm glad you talked a little bit about his life and everything, just to give context of where he's coming from, his mental state.
That's really what prompted me to do this, was reading about him.
Right. So. But I mean, he talks about two different things. There's the matter of goal oriented. A plus B will give you C. But he also, he talks about lack of satisfaction. And satisfaction tends to be not a numerical value, as far because humans have to be satisfied. We behave in ways that rely on operant conditioning. We do things that give us pleasure. It's like Joseph Campbell talks about follow your bliss. So as far as, because as far as I know, people don't pursue pain as a means to an end. We are creatures that tend to follow our desires, like
Right.
desire for curiosity, desire for intimacy, desire for
well,
safety.
even on that vein, I look at somebody like Niall, an artist. I look at the art he produces. Could AI ever develop that art without just simply copying it or having been programmed to assimilate that style? Does AI have the fire in the belly? Will it ever have the fire in the belly to create on its own, to say, yeah, I've never drawn before, but I feel like drawing a picture? Is that stuff that's programmed into it, or is it something that it will ever eventually be able to do on its own because it develops consciousness? I think it takes consciousness to be a good artist. Somebody who is able to dig deep into their experiences. And I thought of you, even though I didn't know you were in the chat room now, when I was bringing up that point that Bach made about happiness. He said, happiness is something, he says, it's not something that any of us have. We can't ever attain it. And then he says, I wish I was more happy, on the other hand. And he talked about how that our conscious, our unconscious, has us doing things that we don't even have to think about because it's unconscious. And our consciousness comes from the awareness that we have just done something out of our unconscious. We might not even define it as that. We can say, I don't think I'm breathing until I think about it. And I go, oh, I've been breathing all day. It's an unconscious act, or whatever it might be. Our reactions emotionally to something. We don't always think about those consciously. We hardly ever do. We react to something out of our gut. And it's later when we reflect on that memory of that unconscious act that we say, I consciously did this and that and made this action as a result of my unconscious drive or my feelings or whatever it might have been. So I thought about you now because we've talked about things kind of like that before. And so, Sarah, I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, Sarah brought up some great points, but they're very huge points, they incorporate the entire human experience and spirituality and consciousness. I think that in order for AI to be a functioning part of our lives and to enhance our lives and technology and the future, why do we want AI? I have no problem with algorithms chasing me down for this, that, and the other. I think it's kind of fun. It's like, if I look up something, they're chasing me down for it. Okay. I still have a choice whether to go for it or not. It doesn't bother me to the extent that it bothers a lot of people.
Sure.
And I also think it's kind of fascinating how the algorithms work, so quickly, and how they can look up your history and they can find out what's going on, what you're into, and they could just present it to you.
Yes.
But we still have the choice whether to accept that. But it certainly doesn't drive me mad,
Right.
And I think AI, we have a lot to learn. Some people might say it's slightly unethical to look into these areas. But I said earlier on that we only have to look at our own species first, and our own mental makeup.
On that point, what do you think it is that people are thinking when they think that there might be something unethical to developing this kind of AI? Why would they consider that to be unethical? What do you think?
No, what I meant was if we study autism, and there has been studies done on autism and schizophrenia and certain aspects of reality, how humans view reality, like an AI might view reality, which is different from our own, which is very focused on task-orientated things. They can only take so much information in at a particular time, and then they can only exist within a particular way of expressing themselves, which is not all encompassing. So it has to be, almost childlike. This is my reality. This is what I understand, and this is what this is my comfort zone.
Yes.
Take me out of that comfort zone and introduce other things into it, and I freak out and I don't understand and I get scared and I don't comprehend, right? So there's a lot to be learned from our own human experiences when we are discovering the capacity for AI. We all have grandiose ideas about AI, and the conscious aspect that they might develop, but we have to understand that we're just giving them what we know,
right?
And we're also giving them all our neurotic influences, and we can't kind of. That's why I mentioned autism, and a lot of people are studying this, because we can't overload the interface, because they won't understand, and they'll react in ways that might be very disturbing to us, sudden erratic acts. A lot of people say, "Oh, I love the idea of AI, but they can switch and they can develop consciousness and they might turn violent and decide that we're not necessary and all this kind of stuff." All of that is perfectly plausible, but it will be our own fault if we actually do that, because the problem with AI is that to know when to stop.
Right.
Once we achieve that eureka moment, then we'll be, as egocentric beings, we'll be like, well, we have to get them to understand this and to achieve that and cure cancer, or become self-aware, and it becomes I guarantee you, we will project on AI a godlike kind of a sentient existence. We will say, well, this is something that we created, which has taken on a life of its own. So there's something very spiritual about that. That has to link in with spiritual.
Sure it does. Sure it does.
Yeah, that's the way we would think. And then we have to explore that, and then we will encourage sentience and the consciousness within AI, simply because we want to see what happens, and we assume it's going to be for the benefit of mankind,
right?
But it might not necessarily be at all. So, to cut it very short, I think AI is a brilliant thing.
Yes.
But if we keep tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it, it'll ultimately turn into a disaster. Because,
yeah.
The AI will become schizophrenic.
That's probably a really good point to make. And by the way, I had to throw this up. Elderberry said, LOL. And the moral of the story is just don't let long-winded grad students do all the programs. They talk themselves in and out of reason all the time. Very true.
I think it's just to keep them off the streets.
Yeah, that has to be. So how did you stay off the streets and out of trouble? I became a grad student. So, well, good thoughts, Niall. I agree with you. That's some pretty good stuff.
But I love the idea of maybe the part of me thinks that, Jesus Christ, we've watched all the shows, right? There's tons of AI shows out there. I mean, I would love, some AI, robot sitting in the corner and saying, "Hey, will you go to the store for me?" Yes, of course I will. Yes, and he walks out the store and he brings back all your groceries. And we all love that idea,
Sure.
Not as someone to order around, but just kind of like they understand commands which might make life easier for us,
Sure.
And I think that's where AI will. I think that's the kind of plateau that we should not kind of jump over. We should just use it. Maybe we can use it to cure certain diseases that we hadn't even thought of, because the information that we fed it, they will analyze it and come up with some different ways, and the cancer cells and how they interact with each other, and how we can, that's how AI should be used, and constructed. But if it's constructed from an egocentric point of view, it'll just, we'll just make a mess of it. Right. And that's my personal opinion. And that also
I can see that
goes into the spiritual aspect as well, because it's like we can create something that we can mistakenly feed the information that they can become somehow godlike.
Now, completely different topic, but or approach to the same type of thinking is the idea that in like Roman Catholic theology, talking about how the demonic was always supposed to be trying to create the perfect replica of humans. Only they were kept on a very short leash, divinely speaking. And they could only go so far. And so you would always see manifestations of a demonic human that they've tried to create, but it's missing its eyes or it's missing limbs or something like that. I've heard that on the spiritual realm. Right. So it would be like that development of AI. It's that you can only go so far before you're starting to create aberrations. You're starting to create something that isn't complete, because we don't know how to put that, in a sense, that spark of divinity, that spark of life into something. Well, we can do is mimic it.
Right. And we can only get to a certain point before it becomes mutated in some way.
Right. Good thoughts.
IBM is already on its way with its development of the Asimov robot.
Oh, really?
I mean, he can go up and down the stairs. He can dance. He can, they're developing, fine motor skills. I mean, we're already at that point. Basically.
Right.
But I think, a lot of it's like we were talking about earlier. It's also going to have to do with our understanding of programming as well. Because do we have the ability to program things such as creativity, imagination?
Right.
Will these robots be able to dream? Because we have this unique ability to do that. I mean, yeah, sure. If you had an AI that was had access to all of your artwork, and then he goes out and says, I can produce a Scotty Roberts like thing.
Can it develop its own?
Yeah. So I mean, it's
that reminds me of I think this movie came out in 99 or 2000. I know I was watching it in 2000. You remember the animated film The Iron Giant?
Yeah.
Very well done. Incredible animated film. And, where the boy meets the giant that's been a little damaged. It's a weapon, an alien weapon, and it's this Iron Giant. Have you ever seen it, Niall?
No, I've heard of it, but I never watched it.
I would recommend on a nice Saturday.
I always thought it was a kid's movie or something like that.
It's a kid's movie, but it's not a kiddie film at all. It's very adult, relatable. And there was one point where he's talking. The boy who finds him is talking to the giant, and he says, "You don't have to be a weapon." He says, "You can be anything you want to be." And the robot says, it's got this voice. It's a mechanical voice that says, "Superman. I want to be Superman." He points to the comic book. And, that wraps up into the end of the movie as well. Choices that the robot makes. He says something about, and I can't remember how it came about in the movie. I don't know if the robot asked him or somebody he was talking to put it in the kid's mind, but he told the robot, he says, I think you have a soul. And the robot is, it's kind of like, I have a soul. And he was contemplating that. And it was very well done for a fun kids movie that had some kind of deep moments in it. Well worth watching. It's worth an hour and a half of time.
Yeah.
So you'd enjoy it.
I must check that out. But I just want to jump in quickly to something you said earlier on about the demonic realm.
Yes.
I think that one of the threats of AI to fundamental religions of any kind is that we've always presumed we're top of the heap, So if AI starts to become a separate sentient intelligence, that pretty much doesn't say a whole lot about God, because he's quite willing to let this happen, so obviously we're not top of the heap because he's allowing for another alternative to come in.
There's always a bigger fish.
There's a bigger fish. So of course you go into it. Reminds me of that movie Contact with Jodie Foster from years ago. And all the religious people around the world were like, you can't do this because you'll basically kill the idea of God, and we can't risk that. We can't risk that because it's too important. So and it's the same thing will apply to AI. So there'll always be a huge pushback against that.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I as a very spiritual person myself, now Sarah might think I'm spiritual, but I am. I have a strong Christian background, Catholic background. I love the iconography. I just love the symbolism and the message around my Catholic upbringing, and it's very important to me. But I can also, be open-minded and say, well, look, there are other forces at work in the universe, and some of them may not be controlled by the figurehead we presume they are. There are influences within our own species which are very, very destructive and evil. There's a lot of madness and neurosis, and a lot of things that scientists have been working on for years to understand the human condition. Like, if we don't understand the human condition, how can we possibly explain the human condition to an AI?
Sure.
And expect them to be any less neurotic than we are, So,
right.
We can presume to teach them love and
we
values.
Breed our own ridiculousness into an AI.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's huge problems with AI. Of course there is.
Sure.
And if you're a billionaire like Elon Musk, you'll just keep going for it, And
sure.
I don't blame him. It's like if somebody's stuck a little thing in my head and say, listen, this will cure all your issues and all your problems, and don't worry about it, there you go. And it worked. I'd be quite happy with that.
Hey, sign me up.
Sign me up, And if they said, well, hey, here's your AI, is going to go shopping for you, you can't walk very well, so we're going to take care of that. It's all in your medical insurance, and everything's going to be, and his name is such and such, like all these TV series.
Imagine what AI would do to sex dolls or sex cyborgs. Suddenly your automated toy for sex at home has a headache. I don't feel like it tonight, honey.
Yeah.
Just going into the absurd comical about it. That's what you would get when you would have AI that thinks for itself.
And very valid points, Scotty. Very valid points, because at the end of the day, we will project onto AI or into AI everything we are as a species, right? And they will be very childlike and factually. If you give them factual information, scientific information, information that they can sort of say this is this is what has been proposed to me, and a solution is required to this particular problem. This is the solution. If you start to confuse the interface by saying, well, what if we some people think like this and some people think like that, so the message is kind of from here and from there, and we're going to throw all the messages into the mix and expect the AI to process it and come out with a reasonable answer or a reasonable behavior. So I think that's when AI will become neurotic.
Sure.
Much like ourselves are, and we can't introduce it because we're so deity obsessed as well, that we always think that there's something looking at us that's watching our every move, and we're special in so many ways. We cannot, in a million years, we can't expect an AI to kind of go, what are they? I get it. Yeah, of course I get it. Because you might as well be talking about fairies down at the end of the garden. Because we're talking about we're talking about something that they can't identify, and if we can't identify it, in physical terms, AI certainly won't be able to.
Right.
So that's the spiritual aspect, which could cause a massive amount of confusion. But having said all of that, I love the idea of exploring AI.
Oh, me too.
Once it doesn't get out of control, once it doesn't go, hey, we've achieved this. Let's see what this does. Let's see what this does. Let's see.
Well, that's like Mary Shelley in writing Frankenstein. What did Dr. Frankenstein do? He created something with an intent to research and create life, and he achieved it. But then he lost control of it because it had a mind of its own. And it could, a lot of people don't know the actual story. It could read, it could think, it could converse, it could present himself well, but he lost control of it. And so, I think that's maybe one of the fears that could come hand in hand with developing AI too far. Yes. Sarah, any final words on that?
I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm against AI, which I'm not, but it comes to that. It's like you were saying, it comes down to this control issue, because the way we are created and made, or whatever, we cannot account for every single permutation and outcome of what could happen. So I mean, it's a control issue. Yeah. We can't predict every single possibility out there. Yeah, if you've seen that that horror movie that came out a little while ago, Megan, about it. And
my kids and my wife watch it. I have not seen that yet.
Well, I mean, it's about like this AI doll that helps this traumatized child, kind of reintegrate herself with socialization, and then eventually, the doll sort of evolves to a point and takes over that anything negatively affecting the child, like the adult saying, hey, you need to eat your vegetables, and then if there's a disagreement, then she goes on a rampage.
Sterilize
right.
Any threats to the child needs to be eliminated immediately.
The difference between tough love and abuse. There's
right.
It's development of nuance and understanding the reasoning behind it. So I mean,
sure.
As far as developing the operating system end of it, we're certainly not there yet. I know, I think it was an article that came out last week. Elon Musk said that he wanted everybody to kind of slow down on
I saw that. I saw him say that
their AI development, because they want a chance for humanity to kind of catch up first, because
well, that was my point, Sarah. Humanity needs to catch up, to slow down, because we're going way. And I didn't know that Elon Musk said that, because he's one of the worst offenders. He's like we have to.
I think he's kind of like, look, I've been developing this and pushing it, but I'm also, because I've been pushing it so hard, I understand the limitations we need to place on it.
Yeah, we need to take a step back and kind of look at the overall picture of the benefits of AI, which could be extremely brilliant. Look at the state of the health system around the world. You know, if you had AIs, performing surgery, with precision, quickly, they don't need to sleep, they don't need to eat, they don't, it's all, and they don't have anything else to interrupt their processes.
Right.
They have a function to do. Can you imagine what they could do for our health system? Just
Oh yeah.
And as I said earlier on, introduce different ideas about the human body and diseases, and how the human body breaks down, longevity, all these kind of things, which an AI would be perfectly suited to do, because
yes,
it's a computerized interface. It deals with facts and history, and results and data, accumulation of data and results, and it can do it in milliseconds, and sort it out and say, well, this is what we need to do to operate on this patient. We need to do this, that, and the other. How magnificent would that be for humans?
Oh yeah. I
mean, it has its place, but even like in the healthcare system, with healthcare, it's not just finding a diagnosis; it's about quality of life. So if, like, say, okay, Scotty had an AI, developing his meals. Okay, your next 4 meals are going to be boiled broccoli versus having a variety, and then
like hell they are
versus having chili. So or when you have medical decision making, it's not just whatever they're taught in school. You have to think about the patient. Like a patient may be eligible, a patient may be in need of a surgery, but if they get the surgery, what is their quality of life going to be afterwards? We have to think about that in terms of when it comes to elderly patients. Like you won't ask for an 80-year-old woman to go get a mammogram, basically. She has just as much as a.
Yeah, you're presuming I meant that AI takes over the entire
rate of incidence of developed cancer than a younger person.
Yeah, I just meant that AI would be perfect for certain surgical procedures, and they could do them much more efficiently, probably, because you wouldn't have the human equation of tiredness and fatigue and mistakes and error and all these kind of things. As regards the actual mental faculties of the patient and what they require and what they, that will still be down to humans, but the AI will have a place because it will have a very precise concept of what it needs to do. I think expecting AIs to incorporate, kindness and empathy and diet and they can have, they might suggest certain things based on the procedures that they've just performed going forward, a diet, but they're not going to sit around and hold your hand in your hospital room.
Right.
That will still be a human aspect. So that's what I mean, that we need to keep control of AI. It can be absolutely magnificent.
Yes.
If it, as long as we kind of say this is what AI will relieve us of, and this is what we can do alongside AI, So AI, anybody who thinks that AI is a replacement for humans, or they're going to take care of everything, that's where the danger will start. So
and I think it also adds to the argument that there's a fine line between having shared common goals and free will.
Yes.
So when they start imposing on the free will, then of course people are going to raise a fuss about it, which they rightly should, because we try to live in a relatively, or attempt to live in a relatively free society. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But if it depends on what shared goals that we have. I mean, AI, there's a lot of capability of AI enhancing one's life versus, if the goal is to, let's say prolong life, that
could be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically, it's like saying robots will do what our teenagers won't do.
Right.
As far as getting something to do what you say, rather than to have an argument about it. Or in the areas of tech, you don't have to worry about unions or paying people, more
Right.
rates. So, and there's AI, they're taking over the jobs that nobody wants, but they always are fighting about. But I mean, if something is serving the purpose, it's like someone else taking over the purpose of what we would do for ourselves in the past. My question would be that because we're not doing what we used to do in the past. I mean, Scotty, I'm sure you've noticed it in generations coming through and going. We're unlearning on how to do things.
Right. Yes.
We're coming out dumber. Basically, we not you the new generations. Like I see on Facebook all these short videos on hacks, and it says, and I'm like, that's not a hack. It's not.
Yeah.
It's just.
Well, that was actually one of the points I was going to make when I brought up doing AI art. That is something where I can see its benefits and its uses while doing very quick commercial pieces. If I'm not being paid to be a creative, I'm being, like sit down and paint me the Sistine Chapel. But somebody wants you to develop a picture for something that's being used commercially. I could see the benefits of AI because you can kick something out pretty quick. You might have to make some tweaks to it if you know what you're doing, and move on. But I could also see AI that if you use it enough, because you're using it for commercial purposes, and you're using it to do something quick where you don't have to break out your paints and your inks and do all of that, you can just do it in AI. And rather than 10 hours, you're done in less than 3 minutes. And you put that thing together and you put it out there. You do enough of that, guess what happens to your talent to paint? If that's all you're doing, it wanes.
And then you come to resent the very thing that is supposed to help you.
Right.
You come to resent it.
It's like even with before I used any kind of AI for anything, which is really only the last 3 months since I really discovered some of it. But 5 years ago, I was so busy always creating logos. It's doing stuff like that, a logo. Where you do the text and the type and you put things together digitally, that when it came to painting a picture, I was like, this is really refreshing because I can step away from my computer. I can do this all on here. But then I started doing some paintings, again, commercially for book projects for clients, illustrating books. And I would find that I could do the illustration. I'd bring it into Photoshop and I'd make some lighting enhancements in Photoshop. Things like that to help spruce it up a bit. Or where I made some errors and I didn't want to paint it out, I could go in and I could touch up those errors in Photoshop rather than repaint a picture. And so I have lots of that kind of stuff I use. And even at that point, where I was just doing simple logo design day in and day out, it became very difficult to constantly pull myself away from that so I could paint and with a brush and so on. So,
yeah, no.
Uncle Dave's popping in too late in the show, Uncle Dave. Too late in the show.
Yeah.
I can't tell.
I just want to say one quick thing.
Sorry,
but to use AI as a tool when you're painting to create an underimage to project onto the canvas to get all your perspectives right and everything, I think it's a great added tool for us to throw in our bag of tricks, or when we're doing a big wall mural to be able to
See, that's a commercial
the image
use
that we're looking for, and then project that up on the wall.
That's
and
a commercial use. If I wanted to paint a
do our
mural,
line drawings and then go into painting.
Yep.
I don't have a problem with it.
Right now, something I'll do when I'm doing illustrations, because I don't have a model that can always be in my, and I'll sometimes use a mirror. You know, I gotta show a guy doing this or something. I gotta go.
Yeah.
And try to see where this falls, where the shadow falls. Now, what I've used AI for in the last couple of months, I'll do a pose. I'll say, I want a guy swinging on a rope. And I want him in an action pose. And you can actually specify. I want it in the style of Norman Rockwell, or in the style of Pixar, or in the style of, so name an artist that's known out there. And it will produce that picture of somebody swinging on a rope, wearing, and then you got to specify, I want him wearing, he's a swashbuckler. I want him wearing an open shirt, a sword on his side, boots, and swinging in. And you specify the artist. It might take a few tries, but it only takes a minute to generate. It takes 60 seconds to generate the picture. And so I could sit there for a half an hour tinkering with things and finally get the pose I want. And then I say, okay, now I'm going to use that. I'm going to print that out. I use that as a model to go by, since I don't have a live model.
Compare that to what I've been doing, where I take a whole bunch of different images that I through Pinterest or whatever. I'm looking for the right castle background. I'm looking for this, that, and the other thing. And I go into Photoshop and I make this giant composite of all these different layers. And I want this guy, I want someone swinging a sword that we're seeing from the back. And I hunt through pictures of reenactment till I find some guy in the right type of rough armor. It doesn't have to be exact, because I'm going to adjust that in the painting. And then create all these stacked layers of images and adjust the size and everything so that I have the perspective right and all that. Hours of work go into that to be able to project that image up and create what I'm looking for, where if I can just tell AI, hey, I want the taking of York, and I want 6 fighters and a blah, 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 and give it the parameters and have it come up with a bunch of different designs, and I can kind of tweak them and look through and say, yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And that's what I refer to as commercial work. If I'm doing something,
I agree with you in the sense that if you rely on it too much, your own skills will diminish.
Sure. Or they become rusty, indeed, to be certain.
Look at Hollywood writers who use these computer-generated script formats to create the bulk of the work, and then they're going to go in and tweak the characters and do this. The reason there's nothing original coming out of Hollywood is because they're letting AI write all the scripts.
That's right.
And it's bad AI because we haven't gotten there yet. So they're not original. They're just, that creates a formula for a romantic comedy and lays in basic text, and then they go in and tweak it, and they're all the same.
Yeah. I'm going to show this only because while we're talking, you go ahead and I'll make your point.
I'm just saying that I agree with you, Dave, totally. You know, we can become over dependent as artists. We're fine artists, you know, artists. I studied anatomy extensively in college, so I know anatomy inside out. So I can draw a human body. I can draw a human body without flesh. I know all the bones. I know where everything sits. I know the dimensions. I have it down. I don't have to refer to anything. But if I want 2 people in the image, and one is further back, or one is in shadow, or one is, you know, sometimes I might get confused with the perspective, you know, and how does that affect the leg length and all that kind of stuff. So AI is a perfect tool for that.
Well, look at some of this stuff up on the screen here. Yeah. This is the program that Rainey and I use if we're doing something commercially.
A Fox by Vermeer.
Yeah. There was the Fox there. You can take a look at any of these. Like, take a look at this, and many of these will say, it tells what they want: a beautiful Native American woman, femme fatale, inspired by Pocahontas, upper body portrait by, and they name the artists: Ilya Kushanov and Mio Hirano and Naomi Akubo, a dangerously alluring gilded blah, 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 kaleidoscope, rich, vibrant colors looking at viewer. That's the parameters that somebody put in. And then that's what AI kicked out in the style, the mixed style of the three artists she mentioned. And all of these, even to the scenery, the fox here, scenic pieces like that, cyborg pieces, weird pieces like this. I look at this and I love the lighting on this. And you see, what did he say in his lighting? A sunny morning with fog and mist, eerie vibes, cinematic, creative, detailed, anti-aliasing, dynamic pose, accent light for his Mandalorian.
I don't know that I'd call that a dynamic pose, but
yeah, that's not a dynamic.
Yeah,
pose.
I get your point. But
yeah.
I think the trick is to use all this stuff as inspiration rather than kind of dependence, you know.
Yes.
Because all this stuff can be created and just go, oh, there it is,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But if there's something that you really want to capture, you know, be it in nature or in a particular race or something, or if you want to explore something which you're not sure about, what people wore at a certain time, or you can use AI to do that, but and then you go, oh, that's how it would look, you know. That's
but see, I look at it, I've worked from photographs for so many years, and that's well and fine when I'm doing something contemporary. But there's not a lot of photographs laying around of the Viking Age or ancient Rome or what have you. And so having something that will help create that imagery and stuff. And often, like I'll say to Scotty, I can see the finished painting in my head, but I'm having trouble getting it on the canvas.
And by the way, every one of these images you're looking at, every single one of these by all different people were generated in about 60 seconds each.
Yeah.
That's all it takes.
Well, when you think about it, isn't it absolutely awesome? You know?
It is.
You know, I mean, it really is. The trick is to kind of, you have to detach yourself enough, especially if you're a creative person, not to go, oh my God, well, you know, I resent this, you know, this. You know, because my role is no longer special, you know, because in 60 seconds, look at this, you know. The trick is to kind of I use it, for example, if I'm saying, I want to show somebody in a room, but I want to do it from the perspective of the ceiling, you know.
Yes.
I had this idea, I'm working on something of a near-death experience or something like that. I wanted looking down at the person, not in a hospital bed, but maybe when they were younger or something like that. And how do I do that? And how, you know, because the head will be larger and it will be in shadow, and I will type in a couple of things and I get some amazing results. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that shows me what a person would look like from that angle. And whether the person looks like the person I have in my head is irrelevant. The angle, you know, the information that I fed in to the AI will give me the information I need to complete the piece. So therefore, I still have faith in my own artistic abilities.
Same here, you know.
Some of the downside I see from all this, like there are sites out there where you can go out and say, I want to write a nonfiction book about this subject, and the bot will write the whole book for you and put your name on it.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, wait a minute. It's one thing to have, you know,
and you own the copyright because it was your account that created it.
Yeah, and I'm like, you're not doing anything. And
you know what that is? All that is being able to produce something and not have to put the time or effort in, and you can maybe make some money off of it.
Well, yeah,
that's
and
really
what content is going into that?
Yeah.
So you know, I don't know. I have a problem with that.
Sarah, what was that?
So that's just, you know, as an artist, you guys are artists and you can, you know, chime in on this. It's about what, is it about creating the actual content or value for time? Because to make an example, to take an example of that, if you look at early Disney movies like Sleeping Beauty, where everything was, all the cells were hand
Right.
painted, versus nowadays, it's all done by computer. It's a totally different aesthetic.
Yeah.
But is it value for time that you're?
And I have seen some images here on this particular app that you can tell somebody, like if you click on any of these, something like this, okay, this little boy, and then you can look back and see what they did to lead up to that. And you say, this is somebody that's probably trying to develop characters for a book.
Or children's stories, yeah.
The only problem is you can't get the same character twice. So you can't create the character. But you know what you could do? If I wanted to do a kid's book and they asked for this style, which is not necessarily my style, I might go in and create each character in the book and say, okay, now I've got models to go by. And I print those out, or I just leave them on my screen. And I could take, okay, here's this guy. And I could use him as my model. And I can draw him then and paint him. So you see a lot of that in these AI things. All of these, they all have, it always comes off with, in 1 minute, it gives you 4 examples. And you get to choose the one you want and blow it up. So like you look at this one. And the original on that was this right here. So that was their original 4. And they went, okay, I want number 1. And so they upscale number 1 on every one of these. That's how it's done. And you can see some of the styles that they use. Stained glass. I've done some that have tool leather. I want a tool leather background surface for something. So I say flowers in tool leather. And you get this amazing thing kicked out in 1 minute rather than going and taking a picture of something. So anyway, all this, we've drifted off. This is all about AI. There are benefits to AI. But you know what? This computer doesn't think for itself. I see more pictures like these where it starts with presenting the stunningly alluring Yennefer from Witcher 3 game or so on, whatever, or a stunning woman. But there's certain phrases you can't use. You can't say naked. You can't say breast. You can't say topless. You can't say no shirt. I wanted to show a guy the other day.
Have you tested all those out?
I've tested them all. I've tried to get around that bot every way I could. No. But you can tell people do. I mean, you look at this and you say, Aeon Flux female, beauty, bodysuited, model D. Some of them go D cup. It says D cup, long hair, and so on and so forth. But there's guys that have said, alluring figure or something like that, like this.
Yeah.
And
you bring up a great point, though, Scotty. Exactly what we were saying earlier on. Already, we're confusing the AI interface,
yes,
by introducing politically correct, scenarios,
exactly.
and they, the AI doesn't understand.
And it's programmed to not do those.
Yeah, so there's a certain amount of schizophrenia is almost automatically going into that. So AI ultimately
picks our character.
If we are to control AI for the benefit of ourselves, we can't give it conflicting information, and expect results that are to our liking.
Yes.
We're going to get confusing results, and the AI will only project back what we feed into it. So the whole idea.
Caravaggio oil paint art style, one of the old masters. Gustave Doré art style.
Love it.
And then his top.
I love that. It's very dynamic. Very atmospheric. It's the kind of stuff I love. And
so it's interesting. It doesn't take much skill. The only skill you have to have is to know who your artists are that you want to mimic, and you can put in. Some of these have like immaculately intricate camera.
It doesn't take much
style.
It doesn't take much skill if you're just going to use that image. But if you're going to then apply that image to a canvas or a wall and actually do the painting, that's where your skill comes in.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's where AI, we can use it as a tool, as you said, Dave. We can use it as a tool, but I think we have to be careful not to become resentful of AI, because there's there's a certain amount of resentment that we can project onto this and go, they can do this and I can't do this. Where do I start with doing this? So that's, we're resenting the very thing that's meant to help us,
Right.
But that's only for, there's 3 artists here, so we're talking from that
there
point
you
of
go.
view.
Yeah.
But it does apply across the board to a certain extent,
Yes.
We can, as AI, starts to come up with better solutions than we.
Well, at the risk of damaging your creativity.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
So now, like here, look at all the, for this picture, looks like a comic book. All of his parameters that he typed in, and I've done this. I've sat and I've typed in all these different things. He describes his character, and then he says, ultra wide angle shot in the style of a Grand Theft Auto, loading screens, GTA style artwork, highly detailed, cell shading, digital painting style, 21st century comic book cover, realistic hairs, well lit, sharp, focus, artistic, unique. And that doesn't even have I've seen some that mention the style of lens you use on the camera, the brand name of the lens, the focal point of the lens.
So you've done this before, but let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So then, do you suppose that initially he didn't have all that detail in the parameters, and then he went back in and had to add keywords to get it to where he wanted it to be?
Yes. I think that's why you get some of this incredibly long. Here, let's just take a look. Take a look at his piece. That's the piece it's showing. That came from, he had these 4 options that popped up for him, but he also has all these different things that he's put in. Now, that's obviously, who is that? Kanye? You have all these different things that he's tried, and you can see different art styles. That's supposed to be moving. There we go. You can see all the different art styles he's tried, photographic styles, and you can get on them. You can read all the parameters on all of these, and look at all he went through to get that guy right there. So yeah, it's trial and error. It does take time if you're just, look at this, Dave. You think of this as a mural. I look at that and I go, whoa, that make an immaculate mural. What were his options originally that the AI gave him? Those were his 4 options that he gave him. Then he chose the one he liked. And so you go back in here, though, and you say, what else has he created in this process? Here you go. Here's all the different things that he created in AI. And each one of those had 4 to choose from as well. So he went through that whole process to get that.
See, I find that fascinating, though, because
it's fascinating.
It is fascinating because the more you type in, or the more you dredge up from your imagination, the more information you'll get back, which kind of vindicates your artistic vision, because you're like, I have it all in my head. I just have to type it all out and feed this information in, and what I get back is going to be pretty close, because I've put a lot of thought into every little detail, which a lot of these examples of now, whether they add to it, they get a result that's way off, and then they add to it, and then they get a result that's closer, and then they add to it, and they get a result that's closer. That's also a creative process.
Yeah.
So you can look at it like that as well,
What it reminds me of is the Star Trek Voyager episode where they run into the guy that's playing with time, trying to end a war and bring his wife back at the same time.
Yes.
And he keeps tweaking the timeline in various ways and he'll get like a 98% probability, but she's not back. And now this other race doesn't exist. Damn it. And then he goes back and he tweaks it a little bit more. And he just keeps doing this stuff. And that's what this reminds me of, when you have like 100 images and it's sort of the same thing, And it's slightly different each time, and it's like you can see where he's like, "No, God damn it, that's not what I wanted."
Yep. This one's for Field Guy if he's
It
out
was
there.
a Next Generation episode, but
Next
Oh, was it next?
Yeah.
I thought it was a Voyager.
No.
Now this is about as close as I've seen this AI program get to nudity. That's all the further it'll ever take anybody, and you can't use phrases like "give me a nude woman in leather." It won't do it with a leather skirt.
What if you say, "I want a Botticelli nude"?
I've never tried that. I'd have to give it a try and see what it did.
Because it looked like in the others that it was trying to recreate those classical artists.
Oh yes, yeah,
accurately. So maybe then it would.
And there are some of these that say, "I did see a couple of nudes," and I thought, how did that guy get nudes? And by nudes, I'm talking, you're seeing breasts and nipples. And I looked at his parameters, and he was citing classics. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know.
Absolutely, I guarantee.
Because clearly, what they're trying to avoid is people creating pornographic and stuff, images.
Look at all that stuff.
Because it could very easily turn into another Pornhub.
Right.
Right. But when you're specifically, saying, "I want this Botticelli" or "I want whatever," classic scenes that have always been done, like Venus,
yes.
Birth of Venus. I want the Birth of Venus, blah, 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 done in shocking pinks or done in whatever. And
that's cool.
You're more likely probably to get that then.
Yes. Yeah. Whereas if you say, I just want a naked woman on all fours,
You're right. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Now look at this. Look at this style that they incorporated. I wanted to see nighttime painting of the castle in the woods, style of whimsical pop surrealism, light bronze and turquoise, Art Nouveau, decorative,
I like that bottom right,
light black. Yeah. Repetition of form, meticulous pointillism, cubist, street art, collage paintings. Now I look at that and I go, wow, I would love something like that, 6 feet tall, hanging on my wall. I think that'd be very cool. Yeah. But then
you got to know your artist and your art history to give it the parameters.
Yes. Yeah. and look at this. Look at how this turned out.
But see, now look at that. Now there's that one.
This one?
Left-hand column, second from the bottom. Very Maxfield Parrish.
Yes. I've actually used Maxfield Parrish in parameters to try to get a certain desired look for somebody. But yeah, that's very cool. And look at all these different things. This is all the same guy. His account.
Limited color palette, very directional lighting.
Yep. And this is picture an anime style of Dracula's castle is what he used on that. I don't see any other parameters. That's interesting. But yeah.
It's knowing how to manipulate the language, and like you said, you have to have a art history and know what it looks like if you're going for a certain aesthetic. It's
another thing I've noticed about AI, this AI program, and there are others, is that many times it will give you like this image. It'll give you the image you want, but look at the hand. Thumb, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers. It does that an awful lot. It messes with hands. Doesn't know. It gives you 6 fingers or 7 fingers. And
stay away from Inigo Montoya. You got no problem.
That's right. You killed my father, prepared to die. Look at that. Look at that. The detail. And these are made in 60 seconds or less by AI. This is the same guy.
Yeah. See, now I could see projecting that and painting that on some kid's wall in their bedroom.
Hell yeah.
And then do a Trumplo arch around the outside of it.
Yes. So all of this stuff is really very cool. And it's the styles that are like this style. I bet you this has got an artist name in it.
Ooh, look at that Thor.
I'm trying to say gold and white mech anime. Martin Anson, medieval. Inspired by Christine Elger, smooth and shiny. So that's pretty cool. So that's all AI.
Yeah,
which makes it very cool.
I think it's fascinating because as an artist, you still have control over the dialogue or the creation of this piece because you know
I saw something else.
You're still using it as a tool, but the
Yeah.
results, some of the results can be magnificent.
Now, does it automatically keep a copy of everything you?
Yeah, it keeps a copy in your account.
Oh, in your account.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
what
your
about
account,
these public
this
images?
is public, and this is all public now. I can look at anything, but you can also, there's somewhere I've seen it and I go, oh, I want to see that, and I click on it, and it says the artist did not allow this to be seen or something.
So you can, in your account, keep something private. So if you're working on a children's book and you're working on a bunch of imagery, you don't have to let it all out before you can release your book.
Right.
Because there's a downside in that. There's some script programs out there that help you format and write a script. You're still doing all the writing, but it does all the
now. You know what I could do?
Formatting.
I could take
but it keeps those copies public, so people can read your script while you're writing it.
Yeah,
and I don't like that.
I think,
especially as
that I don't know much about.
Industry.
I suppose those are where you have to pay for some proprietary elements of the software or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but you look at all these. This is pretty cool stuff.
Where it comes in really handy, Scotty, is I used a similar. I don't know what website or app that is, but do you know the famous Gustave Doré engraving?
Yes.
Where of Lucifer plunging from the heavens, right? And I love that image. But I was always frustrated by the wings. The wings looked to me like steel
bat
wings
kind of.
Bat wings, yeah. And I wanted more sort of, I wanted it more like sort of Icarus getting too close to the sun. I wanted the feathers to be burning off, and I wanted Lucifer to be, sort of really sort of deconstructed. His wings failing, and And so I entered, and some of the results I got were absolutely magnificent, and I was like, wow, that's exactly what I want to do. And I said, but what I had to enter in the parameters of what would a wing look like in flight, or plunging, plunging in flight through an atmosphere of heavy wind, or and it tried to do a few things with animals, and then with humans, and then they came up with some of these type of fantastical images where you just had basically some kind of humanoid figure with these massive wings, which were sort of disintegrating, So I said that's perfect, and that was an influence. And I didn't copy it, but I used that. But my I wanted to kind of build on the Gustave Doré famous image, which
this says, by the way, a Santa Claus with a rifle and some of his weapons in the style of meticulous, photorealistic still lifes, realistic and hyper detailed renderings, war scenes, installation, creator, illustration, quadratura. Dusty Piles Group F/64.
Santa looks a bit suicidal.
It kind of looks like Uncle Dave in the workshop.
Yeah.
He looks a bit suicidal in that picture, It's kind of disturbing. Yeah.
But look at I want you to notice something about the AI here. Look at his boots and his foot. Look at the other foot. It's like, what the hell is that mess? It's got combinations of things that don't quite work.
Yeah, but that's fine.
And even here, he's got 5 fingers. His thumb would be on the other side, so he's got 5 fingers. So that's if you're going to take this and use it, you call that into Photoshop, and you drag some of your wood stock over here and cover this finger up. You can do all kinds of work with that. You can work in a boot. That's just if you know how to use your Photoshop and Illustrator, and you make it work.
You just, when you're tracing it on, when you project it onto the canvas, you just draw the boot in properly.
That's right.
You still have to use your own skills.
Cute dachshund dog running, Pixar digital art.
It doesn't look running, but
no. And that's all the different styles or not styles, but different times she tried to get exactly what she was looking for.
And never got one running.
Yeah.
Not one of them is in motion.
Not one of them is running.
I think
I did one
brilliant.
once. It was something like I wanted to show a picture. It was for a T-shirt design for somebody just last week. And I was trying to get a picture of Jesus, only modern. He's standing without his shirt, wearing blue jeans and work boots. He's holding the crossbeam over his shoulder, and standing on a foundation stone that's been cracked. And it was a whole political message for a very religious group, conservative, that says Jesus. He said, Jesus, I want Jesus to show God the foundation of the country, symbolic. You got to fix the foundation, come back to Jesus kind of thing. So I used AI. I used a combination to create. Here, I might as well. I wonder if I can show you this while we're talking about it. I may have showed it the other day.
You showed it Sunday if you left that in your file.
Here, let's see. It might still be in here. Let me see. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let me show you this image.
It's a fabulous technology. You know, don't get me wrong.
Really
I think it's brilliant. I just I can see a terrible abuse of it as well.
Oh, sure. So how you doing, Flynn? We're in the end of the after show. So, all right, take a look at this, guys. This is an image that I created utilizing probably 75 layers on my Photoshop document.
Did it give
and I was
nipples?
trying over and over to get a picture of Jesus. Or then I finally just said, a man. I said, a man with long hair and a beard, looking sad with his head bowed and his arms outstretched. But every time it showed, his head was up instead of bowed. And his arms, with his arms stretched out, his arms were always crossed or at his side or down by his side. And I thought, you know, fuck you, AI, you're not listening. And so finally, what I did, I went and I found a picture of a good picture of a male model modeling for working out. And he actually had his hands up holding things. And I took that, I imported that into Photoshop. I did all this color paint. It was a black and white photo. I did all this color airbrushing. And I used that as the underneath model to create, because it's just a t-shirt. I didn't want to put a lot of time into it, but then I had to go find, I always put bare-chested Jesus. Then it said, can't say bare-chested. Okay. Jesus with no shirt. Can't say no shirt. Okay. Men not wearing clothes. And you know, it finally let me do that, not wearing a shirt. But it wouldn't give me the jeans and the boots are always fucked up. So I went out to like a Target and online and said, I want to see men's jeans. And it would show models wearing jeans. So I would pull that off. I pull that into Photoshop. I do all this artwork on it. I touch up the denim. I touch up the wrinkles. I put the cuffs on. Boots. I had to go find a pair of boots. I shot a picture of a pair of boots here in the house. And I put them in the angle I wanted and put the lighting on them I wanted. And I imported that. Then I went out and I found a granite stone and I put cracks in it. And all in Photoshop. I put the fish to make it look like he's engraved. And all of that stuff. So building this particular image, and this was just a wooden beam. I said I want a picture of a wooden beam on just online, just looking for imagery. And I found, a company that sells rustic wooden beams. And I cut one of them out, put it in there. I made it look rough. I put nail holes in it and blood on it, and I changed all the lighting.
So what you're saying is it's not perfect.
It's not perfect. And and I put fix the foundation. I made that look like it's chiseled out of the wood. And all of that stuff. So this is a piece of commercial art that didn't pay me anything up front. So I wanted to be really
frugal
with my time. But I put so much time. I probably put 8 hours into this image. with all the different things I did to it because I got obsessed with it.
Okay, but that being said, the others you did went really fast. So if you look at your total thing of all of those designs, yes, you put 8 hours into this one, but in the total process of the 20 or so designs you've done,
you spend a minute or two and you get a design and you go, oh, that's perfect. I'm going to use it like that because I'm only making, $50 as opposed to $450 because the guy I'm doing it for can't pay my price.
Right.
I'll say, what do you got? What do you got in your pocket? I said to a friend of mine who needed a design. He said, I can't afford you. I said, well, what's in your pocket? He said, $12.50. I said, make that $40 and I'll do it for you. He goes,
what I've done in the past? Let's just call it 150 and you write me a check for 150 every month until I decide I've had enough.
There it is. So, but anyway, this is just, I throw that up as an example of AI, but this isn't pure AI. There's a couple of elements in this that are AI. The rest is digital illustration, where I've taken it into Photoshop. I've combined several different elements and put them together, made them cogently flow as one element. Now, is this me sitting down and painting a picture? No. I would much rather sit down. I could have, by the time I was done with this, I could have illustrated that and by hand. And but when I was done, I was like, well, I didn't. I did it this way and I chose to do it this way. But this is something now that it's digital. It's digitized. It was created digital. And it's working for what it needs to be. I might make money back on this. I might not. And so, but it fit the parameters. What the guy just said to me today, he says, I absolutely love this. We need to talk tomorrow about it though, which means, as Dave and I have said so many times, this is perfect. Everything about this is great. I just have one little change.
And then when he calls, he's got about 40 changes.
No. The change, I just got one little change. Could you have him facing backwards? And you're like, that's just one change. Yeah, but that's redoing the whole thing. So I don't know that that's a knock on wood. That's not.
Or they say, I want one change. And by the time you're done, there's only one thing that wasn't changed.
Yeah, it's pretty much.
I like that word land in the bottom corner. And we're going to leave that. But everything else.
Land is good. That's good. So anyway, the only reason I bring all that up is the stuff we do for creating AI art and how handy it is, how neat it is to work with, but how it could also be well, no, I didn't even know what I was going to say there.
Well, I mean, it's a matter of satisfaction. After those 8 hours that you spent working on this versus other projects. I mean, if you feel satisfied with it, then it's worth it. If not, then then it's not.
Well, exactly. And there are things that I do by hand, that I'm much more satisfied with. I'm thinking in particular of, let's see. I'll just show you. I'll compare it to this thing I just did. Now, this has a certain tonal quality to it. It's very designed. It's very black and faded into the black and so on and so on and so on. Well, then you have something like, I don't know if you can see me digging around or if it's just one image.
So while you're pulling that up, so I went into Dick Blick tonight to pick up a fan brush because I need a new fan brush.
Yeah.
And walked out of there $250 later with a set of fan brushes and a brand new easel.
Oh, very nice. Oh, that's the way it goes.
It shouldn't be allowed to go in art stores. I'm like, ooh, I don't have one of those.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm that way. Art store or bookstore. Oh, did we lose Niall or did I shut him off? Niall, did I just shut you off? If I did, I didn't mean to do that. I was putting the picture away, and maybe I clicked on his window. Sorry about that, Niall.
Oops.
He'll be back.
Yeah, but I am curious to see and why this stuff doesn't want to show up. Let's see.
Well, look at how amazing AI is. It actually looks like Joe Biden is actually talking at these engagements.
Right.
But do you think that AI will actually come to a point where there's that famous story of in the Sistine Chapel where an artist comes in, just looks up, and then just breaks his
right,
and walks away to go do something else.
Right.
Do you think we're going to reach that point as well, where AI is taking care of all of our art needs without
right, and it actually could. So that's the thing. Here's a good idea. I'm going to show this because you're all familiar with it to a certain degree. Here, it's something loading up. I think there are probably AI programs that are better than this one that I just demonstrated. I just showed you all, and that you can do a lot more, but you pay for those too. You pay like $60 a month just to have that on your computer. And I can't justify that, so I use the free version. But I think we have the free version anyway. But no, we've got I think Rainey said we've got like the $29 version of it per month for some of the stuff she does with the tumblers and things like that. And here you go. Now, like here's, let me add that to the cover for my book. This is all hand-done illustration. This is not AI. But digitally speaking, let's see. The hat on the sword on the back cover is hand painted. The Roman soldier and the sword on the front cover is hand painted. The stonework at the bottom is just from one of the illustrations. It's a close-up, so it was hand painted. Same with the trees in the background here and all of that. That's all hand painted. But this whole piece I put together in Photoshop. This is a bunch of elements brought together to make something look the way I need it to look. And so, but this is all, and it looks like there's a lot of open space at the top above his helmet. That's just for it clips off. It's set for a bleed, and it cuts off all around the edges. But the kilt in the background, I dropped in. I went and found a kilt online that matched what I needed it to do, and I stuck it into the background. Things like that. So, a lot of, what we used to do in advertising at the advertising agency. I learned this from one of the art directors that I worked with. I said, "Wow, that is a great." Oops, sorry, I'm trying to remove things. That's a great background. I said, "Where'd you get that?" And he said, "You see my tie?" He says, "You notice the similarity?" He had a paisley tie on. Took his tie and laid it on the scanner and scanned it, and then took that and duplicated it and blurred it and did all this stuff. And that became the background for this ad for something, was the pattern on his tie. So we used to do that kind of stuff all the time. Piece of sandpaper, throw it on the scanner. You scan it, and then you lighten and darken and mess with your colors, and you got a great textured background. So, secrets of those trades.
And a scratch scanner.
Yep. But anyway, we're down to about 4 people watching us, which means we've run way over. We've gone an hour and a half over, and or a half an hour over what I want to do. And I got a big day, so I got to get out of here. But yeah. Excellent points, Niall. Thanks for being here.
We still have time for you to call in, Professor Bauer. And
yeah, you got 3 minutes. Sarah, thanks for being here.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, talk to you later.
Thanks,
Uncle
Scotty.
Dave, thanks for being here. I'll see you later. All right, everybody else, anybody that's left that's still listening out there, I've only got 3 or 4 in the chat room. Thanks for being here. Thanks for putting up with the talking about AI art for the last half an hour or more. So, hey, Jay here. This has been fun. He says, thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you for saying so. I appreciate that. And so, and now we got people coming in. Roger Rabbit. Good night, everybody. He says, good to see you, Roger. Roger, check your Instagram. There's a message from me in there if you haven't seen it yet, in your Instagram messages. So, that's all we got, folks. So thanks for being here. Thanks for putting up with a little AI art talk at the end there. And hope you enjoyed the show tonight. And until next time, well, we've got Robertson tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Wendy Robertson and I, 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern, and 10 p.m. London, England. And so other than that, we're done for tonight. Thanks for being here. Good night. Live long and prosper.